So you should have had an opportunity to note what you see in this image, as well as what you think about it. And now I want you to take a moment to stop and consider what you might still be wondering. If you haven't already, be sure to talk with others in your group about those things that you wondered in this image. I'm going to give you a little bit of more information. This particular image is from the Chesapeake Bay area, which is in between the states of Maryland and Delaware. Now, a bay is a part of a sea that is almost surrounded by land, and the land curves around it. It creates a somewhat enclosed area. Now, the ocean actually connects, and it's where seawater or salt water meets fresh water. Now we're going to bring in some text that connects to the image. This text excerpt is from an article called Saving the Bay's Bounty. I want you to take an opportunity and apply that strategy of determining importance. Remember, that's where we looked at taking what is least essential out of a text and then being able to go back and highlight what is most important. So make sure that you have a copy of the text excerpt. Stop this video and take time to determine importance. When you're finished, be sure to grab some Post-it notes and record the details that you left after crossing out what wasn't most essential. Be sure to share your thinking and compare with those in your group to see if you came up with similar thoughts. You can stop the video now, read the text, determine what is important, and write those details that you've determined as important on Post-it notes now. Now that I've determined what's important, I can use my Post-it notes to recount or retell what's in the text. If I take the text away, I'm now able to focus on my notes. So when I retell this, I can determine that what's important in this text is the following. Plants and animals share the bay with 16 million people, and everything that those people do affects the bay and the rivers. Air pollution affects the bay, and then rainwater washes pollutants from all over the area into the bay. There are also pollutants that come directly from cars, or they mix with rain and snow. After I've read all that, I can now determine a main idea, or what this section is mostly about. So I'm going to infer the main idea is about pollution. And I'm inferring that because I notice that the word pollution is repeated a couple times, pollutants, pollution. And so when something is repeated, that often tells me that it's pretty important in the text. So back to my main idea and what this text is mostly about. So I have pollution. I'm going to say it's from people because it's important that we have what people are doing here. And of course, pollutants coming from cars and people. So pollution from people affects the bay. I've inferred this is the main idea of this first paragraph. So now I'm looking at this second paragraph, and I can retell what this paragraph is mostly about just by using my notes. In this paragraph, pollutants cause algae, which is a plant, to grow. That algae feasts on the pollutants and then covers the bay. The algae blocks the sunlight, and that's bad news for plants. Because plants need sunlight to grow, but algae is covering the surface. And when it does that, it's using up oxygen, and then the plants and animals die without the oxygen that they need. So when I look then at this paragraph to determine the main idea, I notice that the word algae is repeated. So that has to be an important part of my main idea. I also notice that pollutants is repeated, so it too has to be an important part of my main idea. So I'm going to infer that the main idea of this paragraph then is pollutants cause algae to grow, creating a problem for plants and animals. And I know my main idea fits because if I go back and I check every detail, does this detail support my main idea? Pollutants cause algae to grow. Okay, there we go. Pollutants algae feasts on the pollutants. That feasting is creating a problem. Algae blocks sunlight. That's creating a problem. Plants need that sunlight to grow, and algae covers the surface. That supports that it's creating a problem. Algae uses oxygen. Plants and animals would die without them. That definitely creates a problem. So I know I've inferred a main idea about this paragraph based on my details. And my details helped me recount or retell what was important in this passage. Now, here's another excerpt from the same passage. This is from Saving the Bay's Bounty. If you look at this heading is kind of like a mini title in this article. This heading is called Tracking Progress. I want you to read this excerpt. It has 5 paragraphs. Determine importance. Use that strategy of crossing out what's least essential so that you are able to find and highlight what is left for important. Then record those details that you've determined important on Post-it notes. Later, we'll use those Post-it notes to retell what's important. We're going to use all of this information to infer one main idea for this section. We're not going to look at a main idea in each paragraph this time, but infer a main idea for the whole thing. So at this time, you are going to stop the video, read the passage, and determine importance. Write the details on notes. Okay, go ahead and stop now. So, using what I've determined is important here, I can retell or recount this passage. It's about tracking progress, and so the bay is getting better because people are cleaning it up. It's cleaner now than it was in 2008, and we know this because of report cards. Organizations issue report cards. These Chesapeake Bay report cards give grades in categories. In 2010, low grades were received in pollution because pollutants were washing into rivers. But high grades were given in crabs because the blue crab population had improved. Using grades is a big deal. It helps people understand problems and celebrate improvements. And this is an approach that's being used across the United States. So tracking progress is a good thing. The bay's health affects everyone. The water people drink, the fish they drink. A healthy bay means healthy people. So now when I'm looking to infer a main idea for this entire passage, I know that I can use my heading to help me. Headings in informational texts are very helpful. They are there to give you an idea of what an entire section is about. So in this case, we have tracking progress. That's going to be part of my main idea. And as I look back at my details, what is it about tracking progress that is important? Well, if I look at all of my details, I know the bay is better because of these report cards, because people are cleaning. So tracking progress of the bay helps helps lead to a healthier bay and people. How are my details supporting this? Well, I know things are getting better because people are cleaning the bay, and I know this because of report cards. These report cards give grades coming from organizations. I like that this particular paragraph gives an example of how these grades are being used to show that pollution isn't doing so well, but blue crabs is improving. I know that using grades helps people understand and celebrate improvements. And so if people understand, it's helping lead to a healthier bay. And then, of course, down here, this last paragraph, I think it's a great conclusion. And I think it really helps lead me to what this whole section is mostly about. Now let's take a look at nonfiction or informational text features. These are things that we see in nonfiction or informational text that can help support the text or help us better understand the text. And the first important feature here that we notice are what we call headings or subheadings. A heading is like a title. In this case, the title of this section, Troubled Waters, and in this section, Tracking Progress. It highlights a key point in the section. Now in this section, Troubled Waters, it's a good title because the water is in trouble due to pollution. Pollution then is affected or caused by the people, and it affects the bay. Tracking Progress at the title of this section is connected to the big idea because through tracking progress, people can monitor or celebrate what's going on with the bay's health. And so that's how a heading or a subheading can help us determine a big idea of a part of text or a section. Now, another great feature that we find often in information or nonfiction texts are the use of photographs or illustrations. They're real-life pictures or drawings, and they relate to the text. This particular image comes from this text, and it's intended to support this section of Tracking Progress. It's a sample report card, and so when we read that section, we read about categories in that section and about the grades. And looking from this, the accomplishment here could be celebrated in that the rockfish fishery seems to be doing well, and we read about the crab fishery possibly improving. But we can also see that oysters and shad aren't doing so well. And if we come up to the pollution category, noting that these three items have Fs, we can infer then that those are the problems that should probably be tackled next. So, through this image, whether it be a photograph or an illustration, it relates to the text and it helps us better understand what we've read. So there's one more piece to this lesson that I want us to consider. It's called BHH reading, or book head heart reading. When I read, I can think about what is in the book. I can think about what then is happening in my head, and finally in my heart. I can start with book, and in asking myself perhaps these questions to prompt my thinking, I can consider this. Now that I've determined what is important or what the author of this text is telling me, I know what this is about and what the author wants me to know. Pause for a moment and discuss that with the others in your group. If I use some of these in my head thinking prompts, I can think back to that big question of what surprises me, and I can consider what perhaps the author thought I might already know, or what I might have noticed. And I think in this case, the author thought that I had some schema about pollution or pollutants. Pause for a moment, look at your text again with your group, and think about that head thinking you might do. What did you in fact notice? Finally, I can consider the heart prompts. While I may not have learned something about myself, I certainly can think about how reading this might help me to be better. And in this case, after reading this text and seeing the image, I really can consider my feelings about it. Does this cause strong feelings? Does it make me want to do something? Or maybe does it make me want to learn more? Heart thinking is really about how a text makes you feel. And so again, as we wrap this lesson up, take time to think about book, head, and heart.